Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad you're here for another episode of my 2025 reading journal series. Let's jump right into things this month by flipping to my reading goals page. Here, I'm going to check off another big goal I wanted to meet this year. Read all of the recommended reads. Yay! Next, let's flip the page to the recommended reads spread. We haven't touched this page in a while, but I'm really proud to say that this month I've read both The Name of the Wind and Project Hail Mary, which has completed my 12 recommended reads of the year. Thank you so much for your suggestions, Brad and Elvina. They were absolutely wonderful reads, and thank you so much to everyone who contributed to this list of books. It made for a really fantastic year of reading, and I discovered so many new wonderful titles and authors. Up next is the 2025 Visual Bookshelf. Let's see what else I read this month. Although I only read a grand total of 4 books this month, they were all incredibly gripping and interesting stories, and they were all what I like to call brick books, or big chonkers. They were all long, fantastical stories with loads of world building and character development, just my cup of tea. The titles I read this month were The Outstretched Shadow, Project Hail Mary, To Light a Candle, and The Name of the Wind. The predominant theme to this month's reads was definitely epic fantasy, something that is very close to my heart. I love sweeping fantasy stories full of adventure, magical creatures, and feats of bravery, and these books definitely delivered. The Obsidian Mountain series, which 2 of the books this month are from, is one of my absolute favorite series, and a comfort read that I often go back to. With this year's reread, it'll be the 7th total time I've reread the series. There are only 8 blank books left on this spread. I wonder if I can fill it up by the end of the year. Let's turn the page over to my series tracker and add in this month's info. I'm going to have to squeeze these last 2 in because there's not much room left on this page. First, I'm going to add the Obsidian Mountain trilogy and gray in the first 2 dots. Then I'll add in the Kingkiller Chronicle series and gray in the first dot. Up next, as always, is my 2025 book log. Let's talk about the books I just mentioned. Up first is The Outstretched Shadow by Mercedes Lackey and James Mallory. This is the first novel of a trilogy, and it's an epic high fantasy tale about a young man named Kellen Tabadon, who is the wayward son of the archmage Lysalon Tabadon. Kellen lives in a magical city of mages called Armathalia, and is destined to become the High Mage like his father, but it's not what he wants. He wishes to be something different, to be free of the burden his father wants him to bear, and to be free to make his own choices. When Kellen stumbles across 3 forbidden books of the wild magic, a magic that is anathema to High Mages, he begins to practice what the books teach, and soon discovers many of the city's dark secrets. When he is found harboring and practicing the magics the books teach, he is banished from the city, with the outlaw hunt on his heels. Can he outrace those who are hunting him down, and learn to be the wild mage he wants to be? I gave this a 5 out of 5 rating. Next, I read Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I'm not usually big on the sci-fi genre, but this book was highly recommended, and my husband really loved the movie version of The Martian, also by this author, so I was really looking forward to giving it a try, and it absolutely did not disappoint. While there were a lot of science and math terms that went over my head at times, the overall story was fantastic and had lots of humor and heart. We follow our main character, Ryland Grace, who is the sole survivor on a desperate mission to save humanity. When he wakes from a medically induced coma aboard the Hail Mary, He can't remember his name, let alone what he's supposed to be doing. But, bit by bit, his memories come flooding back, and he realizes it's up to him alone to carry out this mission. Or is it? This book was an absolute delight, and I really loved it. I gave it a 5 out of 5 rating. The third book I read this month was To Light a Candle, which is the second novel in the Obsidian Mountain trilogy by Mercedes Lackey and James Mallory. This book continues where the Outstretched Shadow left off and hits the ground running hard. Kellen, once the disappointing son of the Archmage of Armathalia, has now grown to become a powerful night mage, valued for his skills in both magic and war. After coming fully into his powers and now living among the elves, Kellen realizes that a great evil is afoot in the land, spreading far and wide, with its sights set squarely on the city of his birth. It's up to him and the rest of the Children of the Light to stop their enemies of the dark, but can they do so before the Demon Queen attacks in full force? If you love magic, dragons, elves, and other high fantasy elements, this book is absolutely for you. This novel is my favorite within the trilogy, and I rated it 5 out of 5 stars. Lastly, I read The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This book was the final book in my recommended read spread, and I'm kind of glad that I left it for last because it was truly excellent. This was another epic, sweeping fantasy that grabbed you from the very beginning and held you tight. We follow our protagonist, a young man named Kavoth, through many trials and tribulations as he tells his life story to a man who's simply named Chronicler. This coming-of-age tale is part mystery, part adventure, and if you're a fan of magical academia, this will be right up your alley. There were so many moments reading this book where I felt such heartbreak and grief, as well as triumph and celebration for our main character. The writing was phenomenal and really made me feel like I was there in the story. I also rated this a solid 5 out of 5 stars. This is the first month where every book I've read got a perfect score. If you'll remember back in September, I came very close to having a perfect month then as well. I can't believe how many wonderful books I've read this year, and I'm really looking forward to what December has to offer. Let's now flip over to the visual tracker spread and add in the covers to these 4 books. There's still lots of room left for more covers on this page, and I'm still really glad I added in those extra pages. I definitely would have run out of room by now. Flipping the page, let's pick the November book for the month. This month was another tough one to pick the best book for, because all 4 books got perfect scores. Although I love the Obsidian Mountain books, I decided to omit them from the running as I've reread them so many times. It then came down to Project Hail Mary and The Name of the Wind, and I ended up choosing Project Hail Mary as my top pick of the month because it was a genre and story that took me by complete surprise with how much I loved it. Next, let's fill in all the info for the yearly stat spread with November's information. In books read per month, I'll fill it in with 4 total books read. I know that's a lot less than what I have been reading lately, but these books were all really big chonkers. For reading types, I read 1 physical book and 3 audiobooks. In books by the page, I read 1 book in the 400 pages column, 1 in the 600s, 1 in the 700s, and finally 1 in the 800s. Those are my biggest reads so far this year. For genres read this month, I'll add 3 in fantasy and 1 in sci-fi. Lastly, for when was it written, I'll add 2 in the 2000s column, 1 in the 2005 column, and finally 1 in the 2020s column. It's kind of staggering to see how many books I read that have been published within just the last few years. I had no idea things would play out like this when I started this journal. Moving on, let's flip over to our monthly overview for November and add in all the details and info for the month. I'll add 4 in total books read and a grand total of 2,682 pages read. That's a lot of pages for just 4 books. Next on the spread is the best and worst reads of the month. This was another tough choice because all of the books were great and all had perfect scores. So how do I pick one for the worst? Earlier, I chose Project Hail Mary as the best book of the month, and for the worst, I decided on The Outstretched Shadow, simply because of the 2 in the trilogy that I read this month, the second one is my absolute favorite. As always, I'll next add in all of the books to the monthly book log with the date I finished the book, its page count, and its rating. Finally, I'll finish off this page by filling in my mini calendar up in the corner with the date I finished each book and the color that corresponds to its genre. Because I finished a couple of the books at the very beginning of December, I'll add those dots on the December mini calendar over on the next page. Let's continue on by turning to the TV shows and series watch page. I'm going to add in Stranger Things, Season 4, which we rewatched in preparation for viewing the newest season. It got a perfect 5 out of 5 rating. Next, let's flip over to the movies watch spread and add in some titles. This month I watched Ghostbusters Afterlife on November 6th. We thought it was just okay, and we liked some of the nostalgic throwbacks and cameos. We rated it a 3.5 out of 5. We also watched The Gentleman on November 7th. We're big fans of Guy Ritchie's work, and this movie was pretty great. It had lots of action, suspense, and the classic tongue-in-cheek humor that Ritchie infuses into everything he does. I gave this a 4 out of 5 rating. On the Besties Binge Watch page, I'll add in the finish date for Wayward, which was November 7th, as well as its rating, which we gave a solid 5 out of 5. This was an incredible series that constantly kept us guessing and on the edge of our seats. We really hope it gets another season. Next, I'll add in Untamed, which we started watching on November 15th. So far, this show has had a solid start and grabbed our attention, and we're hoping it'll be right up there with the rest of our watches in the rating department. And just like that, the November update for my reading journal is complete. Despite November being a very hectic month and only getting through 4 books, it was a month of perfect scores on many different fronts. And with the holiday season just around the corner, who knows what'll be in store? I hope you'll stick around with me to find out. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to join me and for watching my videos. If you want to continue to see more content from me, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to my channel, or leaving a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Happy reading, and see you in the next video. Bye!